Alright, I am back with another video, and today I am doing a build request. A couple of comments have asked me how I would do a samurai build. Now, I looked into the samurai D&D subclass, and basically what that class's kind of deal is giving itself advantage in order to be able to fish for critical hits, and gains kind of some bonuses when you get a crit. The only kind of ability in this game that I felt like really came close to this was the Barbarian's Reckless Attack that they get at level 2, which gives you advantage on your attack rolls, but with the condition that the enemies have advantage to hit you. And I didn't really like kind of making an entire build around one single level 2 class feature, so I decided to go with something that is just more of a interesting martial build that uses the katana and some samurai sort of armor. Now, with this video, I'm going to make this disclaimer right away, because the katana is a weapon that you can only get in Act 3, and is what this build is based around. In a bit of a contrast to some of my other videos, I am going to be allowing myself to use mostly Act 3 equipment for this video. However, I have limited myself to the fact that it is all equipment you can get in Act 3, as soon as you start Act 3 without having to fight anything. So basically, the second you step into Act 3, you can make this build. So you are still going to get quite a few hours of playtime out of it. But either way, I think this is really going to be a really fun build overall. But now we have to get into the second disclaimer, which is the fact that this build is going to be an Oathbreaker Paladin build. Which comes with an issue. Because I make these videos the way that I do, actually showing the level up screen as we go in-game, I can't exactly do that with Oathbreaker because Oathbreaker does not allow you to respec while you are Oathbroken. So I cannot show that screen. So my plan is, for this video, is whenever a Oath-specific thing comes up, I am going to show an infographic from the wiki on screen in relation to Oathbreaker, and then read off of the wiki myself to kind of get that point across. And then at the very end of the build, before we kind of get into the equipment, I will show you the quickest way to break your oath. And it'll be really, really simple. You'll be able to get Oathbreaker pretty much right away, which will be good. So, obviously, to start off, we are going Paladin, and we will be an Oathbreaker, which means we are going to be getting, let me pull up the wiki, at level 1, we are going to be getting Spiteful Suffering as our Channel Oath ability. You can steep an enemy in darkness that churns within you. The target takes a 1d4 plus Charisma Fire necrotic damage bonus each turn, and attack rolls against it have advantage. I believe this lasts for 10 turns? No, it lasts for 3 turns. And so basically you just get a little bit of extra necrotic damage equal to your charisma modifier, and you also gain advantage on attacks, which, in my opinion, works pretty well on theme for a D&D subclass samurai build. Anyway, you're also going to be getting, you're going to be getting your tenets, which obviously you don't have with an Oathbreaker, so that is quite nice. Once it's broken, you don't have to worry about that anymore. As for your ability scores, this is going to make a few of the D&D optimizers cringe, but trust me, this will make sense. We are going for a 17 in Charisma because we are going to be buffing that up with Ethel's Boon to get that to an 18 to be able to get to 20 Charisma as soon as possible. I feel like this is going to be much stronger for the build overall and will allow this build to be at full power much earlier in the game than usual, although it is going to feel a bit weaker as our subclass. The way we manage multi-classing is going to be a little bit weird, but you just have to trust me. 16 Constitution because we want to be tanky. Dexterity is not as important, but I'm keeping it at 14 because we are wearing heavy armor. And Strength at 10 because we don't need it, because we're going to be using Charisma, if that kind of doesn't spoil the whole build, but you get my point. So, let's move on. So at level 2, we mainly started off with Paladin because we wanted the weapon and armor proficiencies. So now we're going to want to, unless you want Divine Smite really badly, you're going to want to jump straight over to Warlock. Yep, we are doing a, it's not really a Hexadin, because this isn't a Hexblade. Palalok, whatever the D&D guys call it. We're going to get 2 cantrips here, and we absolutely want Eldritch Blast. In a lot of Warlock builds I've done, I've avoided taking this because I'm trying to do a specific theme. But here, we want to go for the best of what Paladin and Warlock have to offer, and Eldritch Blast is going to be key for this build. Our second cantrip can be whatever you like. I quite like Friends here because, again, it is just one of the better dialogue cantrips in the game, and I just always take it pretty much whenever it's available. Your subclass doesn't really matter here. Take whatever feels appropriate to you, but I am personally going with the Fiend because I want these two spells. I want Armour of Agafist, and I'm also going to want... I'm going to say Arms of Hadar, actually, because while I initially kind of envisioned this build as kind of a fire samurai build, I actually kind of like the idea of leaning into, like, the necrotic aspect of it. So I feel like we're going to be going with Armor of Agafist to give us a bit more tankiness and basically a retaliation attack, and Arms of Hadar to get that big necrotic damage off. Next up at Warlock level 2, we're going to be getting our boost to our Warlock spell slots. We're going to be gaining an extra spell. I would say Hex is probably on theme here. Again, getting that extra necrotic damage on your attacks. And also we're going to be grabbing 2 Eldritch Invocations, and because we are an Eldritch Blaster, we are going to be wanting both Agonizing and Repelling Blast. Agonizing Blast lets us add our Charisma modifier to the damage that Eldritch Blast deals, and Repelling Blast allows us to have a toggleable ability which allows Eldritch Blast to push creatures away from you, potentially off cliffs, which is super, super powerful. So, yeah. But if you don't care about Repelling Blast, I would absolutely recommend taking Devil's Sight at this point, since we're going to be getting Darkness as a spell later from Oathbreaker Paladin. This will allow you to come up with a very devilish strategy, pun not intended, but you can take whatever you like here, since we're not going to be getting this, like, Darkness for a while, unless you want to take it as a Warlock. So I might actually go with Devil's Sight and Agonizing Blast for now. Next up at Warlock level 3, we're going to be getting one of the main features of this build. We are going to be getting our Pact Boon, and obviously we're going Pact to the Blade here to get Bind Pact Weapon, so that our equipped weapon will use our Charisma for the attack and damage rolls. If you feel like you don't care about the heavy armor proficiency as much as you don't care about the samurai armor, you could just start with Warlock because you don't actually need the weapon proficiency if you use Bind Pact Weapon. However, I quite like getting that heavy armor proficiency because, look, this is basically as close as we're getting to samurai armor. Look at the shoulder pads. The shoulder pads and the little circle thing on the front are what's doing it for me here. You gotta work with me on this. Spells, like I say, you can take Darkness at this level and it won't be a miss. You can always respec it out later. But I also quite like things like Hold Person is always a good one. Shatter or Scorching Ray if you wanted to go more that fire route. Misty Step, always a powerful option. Take whatever you like here, it really doesn't matter. I will be going with Darkness actually for now, just to enable that Darkness Devil Sight strategy early on, because it will carry you through a large portion of the game, as it is quite strong. Next up on Warlock level 4, we're going to be getting our first feat, and I absolutely recommend going straight for that ability score improvement, and bumping your Charisma up to a total level of 20, as with Ethel's Boon. This will be at 20, meaning at total level 5, you already have a maxed out stat, and it is our main spellcasting and martial attacking stat. This is absolutely the way you want to go, so make sure you get that Charisma to 20 as soon as you can. We also get another cantrip at this level. I'm going to grab Bone Chill, since it is a necrotic damage cantrip at range, and if we feel like Eldritch Blast really isn't doing the job for whatever reason, it's a nice little bonus to have, but if you feel like it's redundant, take Blade Ward for a little bit of tankiness. We also get another spell at this level. Again, same as before, take whatever you like. I'm personally going to grab Misty Step because I quite like the utility. And finally, at Warlock level 5, we are going to be getting our Deepened Pact feature, which means as a Blade Lock, we are now getting extra attack with our Pact weapon, meaning now that we are a full martial fighter as a Warlock. Next up, we're also going to be getting level 3 spells from this point, and I personally want... well, it doesn't really matter. Vampiric Touch could be nice if you want to be able to get a little bit of healing while still doing necrotic damage. Counterspell is obviously always a powerful option, although we will have limited uses of it because our only level 3 spell slots with this build will be Warlock. Fireball if you just want that Nova damage. Hunger of Hadar could definitely be on theme, and actually I might take it here because I've never really taken it in a build, so I'm going to grab it here. We also get another Eldritch Invocation at this point. If you don't have Repelling Blast already, you can absolutely grab it here. But something like Beguiling Influence, Beach Speech, or even like Sign of Ill Omen on Mire at the Mind could appeal to you, but I quite like just having Agonizing Blast, Devil Sight, and Repelling Blast. And with Warlock now finished, we are going back to Paladin, and we are staying there because we want that level 7 Aura feature. We're going to get a fighting style here, and since we're only using a versatile weapon here, or perhaps a spear if you're so inclined, we're going to go with great weapon fighting, because that is going to allow us to do even more damage most of the time. We're also going to get some spells with our Paladin levels here, and we get quite a few because our charisma is so high at this point, and I'm going to recommend a few. I always like to recommend the elemental smites because they all have minor utility, and I quite like Wrathful Smite here as it does it can inflict fear, which is going to be on theme for a build like this. But Searing Smite and Thunderous Smite are always good. I really like Compelled Duel here. Compelling someone to fight you one-on-one as a samurai feels extremely thematic to this build, and I quite like it. And the rest can be whatever you really like. Heroism, to be able to make yourself immune to being frightened and get a bit more tankiness. Obviously, this doesn't stack with Armor of Agathis if you plan on going that route instead, but feel free to change it up however you like. And something like Command is always fun as well. Next up at Paladin level 3, we will be getting some subclass features, but our main class feature makes us immune to disease, which works for us, and we're also going to be getting some subclass features, so I will pull up the wiki and read what we get here. We're going to be getting 2 Channel Oath abilities. We're going to be getting Control Undead. Use the power of your oath to gain control over an undead creature. The undead will follow you around and attack your enemies. The target's level must be lower than yours. This probably is either not going to come up at all or in very, very few niche cases, but is still a nice feature to have. Dreadful Aspect is another Channel Oath ability, letting your darkest emotions burst forth as a menacing pulse to frighten nearby enemies. So you kind of have a couple of options here to either control undead or inflict fear, but I think you're always going to be using your Channel Oath for Spiteful Suffering from level 1. We're also going to get 2 Oath spells as well, meaning we get Hellish Rebuke and Inflict Wounds, which are just really, really cool, and Inflict Wounds is also another necrotic damage spell, so that's quite fun. And as such, they're already prepared, so yeah. Next up at Paladin level 4, we're going to be getting another feat, and you kind of have a few options here. Great Weapon Master, I believe, does work with, yeah, oh no, I don't know. Yeah, so this part doesn't work with, versatile weapons, I don't believe, but the Great Weapon Master bonus attack will, so that could work if you want to keep attacking after killing an enemy, but honestly, it's probably not that great for this build. Savage Attacker could actually be an interesting one, allowing you to reroll your damage die twice and use the highest result. Maybe stacking that with Great Weapon Fighting could actually give you the ability to basically always roll high on your damage die, so that could be an option here. There's always Tough if you want some more HP. And I'm just actually going to have a look at this. Tough gives us 98 HP. Okay? Ability score improvement, Constitution +2, gives us the same. This might just be because I'm playing on Tactician, but I don't know. You guys will have to help me out with why this is the way it is. There's also a few other options here, like, again, you could take the dual wielder feat, because I feel like if you wanted to dual wield, and I kind of recommended this to a few people in the comments, if you dual wield the katana with a spear, that is actually a really cool build, but I'm not going to focus on that here. But if you wanted to do kind of like a dual wielding spear and katana build, I even recommended to some people in the comments to take Eldritch Knight up to level 3 or 4 to be able to throw your spear and have it return to you, basically having a ranged attack as well. But that didn't feel very samurai-y in the end. They don't really throw their spears so much, I don't think, or at least it doesn't feel like they would. So I decided to go against it here, but feel free to take dual wielder here if you want. I'm just going to go for the ability score improvement and bump up our constitution so we can be even tankier. And with Paladin level 5, we're going to be getting extra attack, which we already have, so it kind of sucks. But we are getting our level 2 spell slots now, which is nice. We're also going to be getting our final Oath spells here, so let's quickly have a look at what those would be for Oathbreaker. And that is the Crown of Madness and Darkness spells. So like I say, we do get it, but it is at a high total level, so I don't think taking it as Warlock is really a punishment. It absolutely works out in the end. So we can prepare our spells here, and we also get access to some extra high-level spells, including Aid, which is always a super useful spell to have, and Branding Smite, which just rounds out our smiting options. At Paladin level 6, we're going to be getting Aura of Protection, meaning that any nearby allies gain a bonus to their saving throws. This tooltip is still bugged, but I believe with our charisma maxed out, it should be a +5 to saving throws, which is huge. And also we can equip an extra spell. And finally, at Paladin level 7, we're going to be getting our Paladin subclass feature, which means we're going to be getting, as an Oathbreaker, Aura of Hate. You and any nearby fiends and undead gain additional damage to melee weapon attacks equal to your charisma modifier. The aura disappears if you fall unconscious. Basically, that means that with Pact of the Blade and Aura of Hate, we are adding our charisma modifier to the damage of our melee weapon attacks twice over. That's pretty strong. And that is the build. Now, obviously, before we get into the equipment, like I said, I just want to go into a quick way to break your Paladin Oath early on, pretty much right as soon as you start the game, in order to be able to get those Oathbreaker benefits quickly. So, let's leave camp, because I've actually set this up ahead of time. Yay me! So, right now, I am just outside of the Emerald Grove, right where Lae'zel has been captured, and all you have to do is just get close enough to fire an Eldritch Blast at one of these two, and Oath broken. So heading back to camp, we get the cutscene. I'll skip. Why can't we get this armor, man? Anyways. And then, tally-ho, the Oathbreaker Knight is here. Meaning that if I just quickly skip through his dialogue. And then we become an Oathbreaker. Blah, 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 blah. And hurrah! We are now an Oathbreaker as early as like 10 minutes into the game. Meaning we now get all of those features I have been discussing, which is pretty cool. So yeah, because we're only at 19 charisma, it's a +4, but at 20, which we would have with this build, if you took Apple Spoon, it would be at a 5. So this is pretty awesome. Again, so we're getting a +5, so we're getting a total of +10 to our damage with our melee weapon strikes, which really does buff up the katana, as it is just a +1 longsword at the end of the day. So yeah, that is the build. Now that we have everything set up correctly, this does feel quite powerful. Again, we are kind of working with a weaker weapon here, but it does absolutely work for the samurai. But speaking of, let's get into the equipment. So, starting off with our weapon, like I said, the katana, it is a +1 longsword. As our packed weapon, it is going to do quite a decent chunk of damage, but again, it is still a bit subpar. So if you don't care about just using a katana, you can absolutely go with Selûne Spear of Night. Again, samurai did use spears more than katanas. Katanas were more of a side arm. And as such, Selûne Spear of Night works pretty well here. It is a legendary spear. So it's a +3 enchantment. You gain advantage on wisdom saving throws and perception checks. You also gain dark vision, which with Devilish Sight doesn't really matter, but you also get the ability to cast Moonbeam and Moon Mote. So it's just a nice thing to have overall, and like I say, if you want to go for the Eldritch Knight route and be able to throw this, it is a really cool build. But actually it does kind of, because it's not our packed weapon, hold on, let me just bind packed weapon here. And you can see just how much damage this bad boy can pump out, and it's about the same. Whoops. Still though, I think this works quite well as well, but overall it really doesn't matter how you want to do things. But like I say, if you take the dual wielder feat, have this in the main hand, have this in the offhand, you actually have quite a powerful strategy. But anyways, let me just rebind that packed weapon. Huzzah! So, let's get into the equipment real quick. Again, like I say, I'm using Act 3 equipment in this build, but it is all equipment that you can get without having to do any major questlines or combat. So, first of all, the Helm of Baldur. Now, obviously, for most players playing their first playthrough, you wouldn't know how to get this straight away, but if you already know how to get to the location that this is in, you can get this as soon as you start Act 3 without having to fight anything. And it is one of the best armor pieces in the game, as for one slot you gain 2 hit points at the beginning of every turn, which I quite like for this build. Being able to heal at the start of each turn, in addition to dealing necrotic damage, makes you feel like this Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Baldur's Gate time thing. You just don't die. You don't die, and it feels super cool. Like, you just keep getting back up. It feels so awesome, and I really like it on theme for this build. You get a +1 bonus to your armor class and saving throws. Awesome. You cannot be stunned, and you cannot have critical hits land on you. For one slot, that you can get without fighting anything, this is an insane piece of kit. Absolutely worth it on this build. I did really want to find a samurai helm, but unfortunately the closest thing I could find was the Mask of Soul Perception, which, I mean, I don't personally like it, but if you do, more power to you. It would give you a +2 bonus to attack rolls, initiative rolls, and perception checks, and can also be obtained without fighting anything. All you have to do is steal it from a chest, and yeah, you could get something pretty cool looking if that is more your persuasion, but I decided to go for the slightly more power building option and just go headless because, I don't know, I quite like the vibe of this dude. Next up, the Splint Armour +2. You just buy this from any vendor into Act 3 once you're the right level. In fact, I believe if you're high enough level in Act 2, you can actually buy this. But this is the Samurai Armor. This is just a decent heavy armor set with 19 AC that you can get, and it just looks awesome. For the record, I've colored all of this gear with Harlequin black and white dye because I think it looks the best, and it was the best way to kind of get a synergy color-wise between the armor piece and our arms and legs. Speaking of, the Legacy of the Masters. Gain a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with weapons. Basically just an overall power buff, adding a little bit more to our katana's damage. And you can buy this from a vendor as soon as you start Act 3 if they are alive after the events of Act 2. Very, very awesome piece of kit here. Again, I've never really used these before, so it was quite fun to point them out. And from the exact same vendor you get the gloves from, you can also gain the Boots of Persistence, giving you freedom of movement and long strider for free, basically meaning that freedom of movement. You cannot be affected by difficult terrain, spells, or magical effects, and you can't be paralyzed or restrained, and long strider increases your movement speed. Overall, this is a really, really nice setup. It all kind of matches and looks good. I would imagine you could probably get the Splint Armour +2 from the same vendor as well. If it appears in his inventory, it is kind of random. So the fact that these can all kind of be obtained at the same time is pretty good. Next up, the Amulet of Branding. You can obtain this in Act 1.5, as I am now officially calling it, at the Githyanki Crash, and it gives you Brand the Weak, basically allowing you to, for 3 turns, once per long rest, make an enemy vulnerable to bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing damage, allowing them to take double damage from the katana. Also, we have the Ring of Regeneration here. This is meant to stack with the Helm of Baldur to give you increased healing at the start of every turn, whereas the Baldurin's Helm gives you a fixed 2 hit points. This can give you 1 to 4, allowing for a potential total of 6 healing per turn, which is super good. And finally, the Ring of Arcane Synergy. When you deal damage with a cantrip, you gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns. For those of you that don't know, Arcane Synergy, it adds your spellcasting ability modifier to the damage of weapon attacks. So, we have one of the best cantrips in the game for damage, Eldritch Blast, cast that at an enemy, and then on your next turn, go absolutely in with extra power on your attacks, applying your Charisma modifier 3 times over. Super, super fun, and it's also a good way to kind of get that Aura of Hate second stack of that Charisma boost before reaching total level 12, or whatever level you decide to go with this leveling scheme. Maybe you'd want to go for the Warlock levels later and maybe respec your stats. It's entirely up to you. And finally, we're going with the Darkfire Short Bow. Again, Samurai did use bows, so this isn't exactly out of place, but again, it's not really the focus of this build, but you still have a +2 enchantment on it, and it does get a damage buff from the Legacy of the Masters as well, so it's got a decent amount of range damage for when you're really in a pinch and for some reason can't use Eldritch Blast, like perhaps you're silenced. It also is going to grant us resistance to fire and cold damage, which is just nice to have, and you can cast haste on yourself once per long rest. So, again, this is kind of a boss beater build, just able to absolutely go in on a single enemy between the Amulet of Branding and haste. You can basically do a ton of damage over a few turns and really get those hits in. If you are struggling for a decent piece of armor before getting the Splint Armour +2, the Adamantine Mail, while not very samurai-ish, kind of could fit the bill until you get to that point. Basically, you can get this in Act 1 for beating the game's kind of big secret boss, which I used to think was really, really hard. And then I played it in my recent playthrough that I'm doing with a friend of mine and accidentally killed it in 2 turns by throwing shit. Seriously, I got it when that playthrough is finished. I'm absolutely doing a video on that build because it's the most fun I've ever had in this game, easily. But overall, this is the kind of armor. Also, you can go with a cloak. I haven't personally worn one because of fashion here, but if you wanted to go with one, I have a couple of options. The Cloak of Protection is always nice, just giving you that extra bonus to your AC, as always, and also your saving throws. It can be obtained in Act 2, and it's just one of the best all-around cloaks if you've got nothing else to fill that slot. But also, the Cindermoth cloth, in my opinion, looks a bit better overall with the fashion. And it just means that enemies who attack you receive burning if they are within melee range. So, you know, it's just a little bit of extra damage tacked on, and if you just need something to fill that slot to get that kind of niche effect that still looks good. But I'm personally going without it, because I don't know, I just kind of prefer it without it. Although now that I'm saying that, I do kind of like the cloak. It's entirely up to you. Some other kind of armor options, if you're not too into the kind of 3 pieces I have here, you can go with the Hell Dusk set, which you can get a little bit later, but again does not actually require you to beat any major bosses, with the exception of the Hell Dusk gloves, which require you to beat kind of a mini boss. But basically all of these would just give you extra damage on your attacks and the ability to kind of do a bunch of fire stuff if you wanted to go that route. So if you wanted to kind of grab the Hell Dusk pieces as you kind of get them in Act 3, that's absolutely fine, but I quite like the setup that we have here. So yeah, that is the build, and overall I have to say I actually find this one to be quite fun. Getting to finally do a Paladin Warlock mix that actually focuses on those 2 classes a bit more was super cool, and it was quite interesting to revisit the katana with a proper samurai build. So I hope the people that requested that really did enjoy this one. And I quite like the idea of kind of making this, like, hatred-fueled samurai who has, like, broken their, like, sacred, like, oath. Because samurai kind of had, like, tenets and morals that they followed. So being kind of an outcast who goes against, like, the samurai code and as such has kind of turned hateful. Because I guess samurai kind of are, like, the, like, Japanese equivalent of what like a mythical paladin would have been. So I don't know, it's kind of fun, like a fantasy like paladin that is like this samurai type character. I don't know, I just quite like it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this build. I feel like the overall theming is really nice. The kind of abilities that you get out of it, it's nice to just kind of do that, like, basically kind of building a class for what it's for, building a Warlock for Eldritch Blast, and building a Paladin for, like, its Oath features. It's nice to actually build a build that is meant for the class, that is actually meant for the classes that they use. And overall, I feel like this is going to be a ton of fun. I feel like you're getting a strong build out of this. Again, play around with the levels. You may feel like you want to go kind of with those levels in Paladin first, then respecking into Charisma later, once you get the Pact of the Blade later on. But again, it's free for experimentation, do whatever you like. Perhaps if you don't care about going for that level 7 aura feature, there's something else you could throw in as a 1-level dip, maybe Sorcerer for some extra spells, if that's your persuasion, but I personally wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, I think that's everything for me. I don't think I have anything else to go over, except for perhaps, like I say, my next video, well, my next deity build is going to be Tiamat, but I might put the deity builds not all of them, but I kind of got a few more builds I want to do first. I think my next video is definitely going to be the Link build from Legend of Zelda, and I think I've got an interesting way of doing that, so I hope it works out, and I hope you guys will stick around for that one. And it'd be interesting to kind of do a character build again, because obviously my channel got started, well, not got started, but I started this kind of build-making thing with a character build, that being Dante from Devil May Cry, and so I feel like it'd be kind of nice to return to the roots of this kind of whole thing, as it were. So yeah, quite looking forward to building that, so that is going to be my next video for tomorrow, so feel free to suggest any kind of, combinations or ideas that you might have in the comments. I'm pretty sure I've got the build sussed out, but I kind of want to see what you guys might think, if it might give me some ideas. But yeah, I think that is going to do it for me overall. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.